I'm crouched on the pantry floor with a bleeding palm and my brother whispering through the door like a stranger who memorized his voice from a tape. He keeps saying, "Just slide it out, man. That's all I want." The key. You don't even know what it opens. The wood around the latch is starting to splinter. Somewhere behind him, the hallway clock keeps hitting the same tired tick, like the house is practicing a lie. I haven't called the cops yet. I can't. Not until I'm sure I'm not the problem. Back up. 2 weeks ago my dad died on a Tuesday that smelled like old coffee and hospital plastic. He was the kind of father who could fix a toaster blindfolded but never learned how to ask if you were okay. He left a will the size of a takeout menu. Most of it was normal: house to be sold, proceeds split between me and my older brother Eric. There was one handwritten line at the bottom, squeezed into the margin like a secret he didn't trust the printer with: "If they come asking about Larkspur, give them the blue key." Larkspur wasn't a place either of us could find on a map. We thought he was delirious or sentimental or both. I didn't think about it again until after the funeral, when the attorney slid a small envelope across a table slick with finger smudges. Inside was a key like something from a music box, tarnished blue enamel on the bow, teeth filed in a strange, almost delicate pattern. It looked too pretty to open anything dangerous. I was wrong, but the danger didn't come from what it unlocked. It came from who wanted me to never find out. Eric and I agreed to pack the house together, partly because the realtor said it would sell faster if it didn't look like a museum to our childhood, partly because neither of us wanted to be alone there. The house still smelled like our dad, WD-40 and pine cleaner, and a hint of smoke he always claimed was from the grill. I slept on the couch the first night because my old room was a storage closet now. Around midnight I wandered the hallways like a kid pretending not to be scared. That's when I noticed the hallway clock had stopped at 3:07. The second hand trembled, then gave up. I tapped the glass. It started again. In the reflection I could see the attic pull-down cord swaying, though no window was open. I didn't tell Eric. He gets weird about the attic. He says it makes him feel like he's forgetting something. The next morning he announced he had a job interview and left early. I watched his taillights fade, then pulled the attic cord. It was hot enough up there to soften a crayon. The insulation looked like stale cotton candy. I kept ducking rafters and spider-web commas until I found an old cedar trunk wedged behind the chimney. It had a tiny keyhole painted blue. I didn't have to be smart to try the key. It clicked easy like a sigh. Inside wasn't treasure. Just envelopes. The top one was addressed to me in Dad's precise print. "If you open this, I'm sorry for every secret I kept because I thought I was protecting you." Beneath that, another line: "Larkspur is not a place." The envelope felt heavy with all the things that would change if I read it. I didn't get to decide. Because the floor groaned behind me and I turned so fast I smacked my head on a rafter and saw stars. Eric stood halfway up the attic stairs, one hand on the rail, face blank the way you get when you're trying to remember how to be a person. "What's in the box?" he asked. "Letters," I said, which wasn't a lie yet. He climbed the last few steps. "You found a key," he said. "How did you?" "It doesn't matter," he said. "Give it to me." I don't know what tilted in me, fear, stubbornness, the muscle memory of 100 childhood arguments, but I palmed the blue key and slipped it into my pocket. Then I did the dumbest thing I've done as an adult. I grinned. Eric's jaw twitched. He took a breath like the room had stolen the last one from him. "You don't want to do this, Nate?" I said. "Do what?" "Make me into the guy Dad thought I was," he said, and for a second I saw a younger version of him, the one who used to lean over my shoulder while we built Lego and say we were engineers. Then he reached for my pocket. Everything turned stupid. I dodged. He caught my wrist. The trunk slid. The letters spilled like birds startled into the sky. In reaching to stop them I knocked my head again and went half blind. When my vision rebooted, Eric was holding a letter I hadn't opened yet, scanning, eyes narrowing. He stopped on the word, Larkspur. His mouth softened. "So he told you," he said. "I haven't read." He didn't hear the rest. He bolted. He snatched the trunk lid, slammed it shut, fumbled the tiny lock, and then, like we were kids again and this was hide and seek, he ran. Down the attic stairs, through the hallway, out the back door. I chased him, stupid, skidding on the polished stairs, catching the banister with the same palm that would be bleeding later. By the time I got to the kitchen, the back door was swinging and I could hear his car ripping gravel like teeth. It took me a full minute to realize he hadn't taken the blue key off me. He'd taken the trunk key from the lid. I spent the next day doing what you do when something is wrong but hasn't become official yet. I made eggs I didn't eat. I googled Larkspur, not a place meaning. I tried Larkspur symbol blue key. The internet gave me flower meanings and a band from Nebraska and a hardware store. I kept not reading the letter addressed to me. I kept not calling Eric. When he finally called that night, he didn't say hello. He said, "Do not talk to anyone who shows up asking about Dad's work. If they use the word Larkspur, hang up." "What is Larkspur?" I asked. He exhaled so long the phone made a wind tunnel sound. "It's the thing that got him killed," he said, and then the line clicked dead. I didn't sleep. At 3:07 the hallway clock stopped again. This time I didn't tap the glass. I got up and walked to Dad's workshop, because grief makes you superstitious and fear makes you practical. The workbench smelled like oil and second chances. In the top drawer, under a folded hand towel, I found a flash drive taped to a business card that just said, "Ask for Camille. She owes me." On the back, a phone number. The tape left blue smears on my fingers. I went back to the living room, laptop open, flash drive in. It asked for a password. My brain rifled bad guesses. My birthday, his birthday, Mom's maiden name, before landing on the only thing that made sense. I typed Larkspur. The screen opened to a folder called Invoices. Inside were PDFs named with dates and initials. Normal enough until I opened one and realized the amounts were insane. 6 figures. 7. Routinely. The payer line was a company I'd never heard of. The memo lines were maddeningly vague: hardware, consulting, adjustments. But the routing numbers had our town's little credit union. Dad had always worked on appliances for cash and taught at the high school shop. This folder was a version of him I didn't know. Another version opened when I clicked the third file, and a scanned handwritten note from my father spilled across the screen. "If you're reading this, I ran out of time to choose the clean way." At 8:04 the next morning, a white SUV I didn't recognize idled in front of the house. I watched it from behind the curtain like a child waiting out a thunderstorm. The driver didn't get out. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then one text popped up. "Is Cameron there?" Wrong name. A minute later another. "We're here to pick up the blue key." Not wrong. I called the number on the card. It rang twice and a woman answered like she'd been expecting the exact shape of my breath. "Who gave you this number?" she said. "My dad." "Or that card he left. He said you owed him." Silence widened. "Where are you?" she asked. "Home." "Don't say the address," she said. "Is the blue key safe?" In the driveway, the SUV's passenger door opened. A man in a gray blazer stepped out and stretched like he was bored. He looked straight at the window I was trying to hide behind. I stepped backward into the kitchen, into the pantry, into the only door in the house that locks from the inside. "I have it," I said, and then the pantry door rattled and Eric's knuckles sounded like they were trying to remember me from the other side. "Just slide it out, man," he said. "You don't even know what it opens." I didn't slide anything. I told Camille there were people at the house. She asked if I could get to the garage and if there was a breaker panel. I said yes. She said, "Kill the main, count to 30, turn it back. Then go out the side gate and walk to the end of the block. Don't run. If anyone asks, you're getting coffee." She hung up before I could ask who she was to give orders that fit me so well. The pantry latch splintered a little more. "Nate," Eric said, like the name might talk me out of the person I was about to be. "They're not with me," he added, which did not make me feel better. "But you can't ghost them. That's the worst thing you can do. Attachments. They get nervous when they can't attach." "The hell are you talking about?" I asked. "Just give me the key," he said gently, and the last time he talked this gentle we were kids and he needed me to take the blame for a broken window. I slipped the phone in my pocket, tucked the blue key into my sock, and opened the pantry window that Dad had nailed shut 15 years ago. The nail gave like a tooth. I popped the screen out and slid onto the little concrete stoop that faces the side path. The grass was long enough to whisper. I could hear the SUV idling, the low throat of it. I crept under the kitchen window, past the rain barrel, and into the garage, where the breaker panel sat above the water heater like a stern parent. I killed the main. The house went quiet with its own surprise. I counted, turned it back. Somewhere inside, the hallway clock woke up and then died again. I cracked the side door, slipped out, and walked like a person whose life was still a list of ordinary errands. At the end of the block there's a coffee shop with a chalkboard that always thinks puns can save us. I went inside and stood in line and didn't order anything. My hands shook like I owed them an apology. A woman slid into the spot behind me and said, "You must be Nate." I didn't turn right away. When I did, I saw someone who could pass for a bank manager or a teacher or the person you trust to feed your dog. Neutral face, practical shoes, eyes that took attendance. "I'm Camille," she said. "We're going to sit over there and pretend to fight about taxes." "I don't know you," I said, because it felt important to say in case I needed to remember this moment later as the one where I'd tried to be smart. "You will if you live through this," she said, and the casual way she said live made the edges of the world change. We sat. She pulled a folder from her tote and laid down papers like a dealer and a priest. "Your father found a hole," she said. "Not in the bank. In the people who run it." Larkspur is a project name they use internally when they move money that doesn't belong to them. Your father got close because he fixed a cash counting machine that kept misreporting totals. He was the only one who noticed it was misreporting in a pattern. They tried to bring him in as a fixer. He pretended to play along and recorded everything. He also did a few small jobs for them to maintain access. "He took money?" I asked, hearing the way my voice shrank at the last word. "He moved it," she said, "and then moved it back in ways we can prove. Your father was building a case from the inside. He brought me in because I used to audit that credit union before they replaced me with someone more agreeable." The barista shouted a name that wasn't mine. Outside, the white SUV drifted by, slow as a shark. I kept my head down and my hands on my knees so I wouldn't do anything stupid like wave. "Where does the key come in?" I asked. She tapped her folder. "Their archive room has a mechanical lock. Old niche custom. Blue enamel model out of production. Whoever designed their system was nostalgic and cautious. He didn't trust purely digital. The room is under the community theater on Lark Street, behind a door labeled props. That's Larkspur. Not a place. A habit of naming. Your father got one of the keys out. He thought if they ever came for him, he needed the option to finish what he started." I reached for my sock and then thought better. "They're at the house," I said. "Two guys. Eric is there too." She leaned back. "Is your brother compromised?" Compromised is a big word until you think about the small ways you owe people and how debt makes even your footsteps sound different. "He's attached," I said, surprised by how true that felt. "He knew about the key before I did." "What did your father write to you?" she asked. I didn't read the letter yet. I said it like a confession and a dare. "Don't," she said. "Not here." The coffee shop door swung open. A man in a gray blazer, the SUV passenger, scanned the room like a security camera in a movie that's too confident. His eyes slid past me once, twice, and then landed. He smiled like a dentist. He touched his ear. The driver came in behind him, bulkier, softer eyes, the kind of guy who apologizes after he pushes you. My pulse went circular. "Stay," Camille said, rising. She walked to the counter and started a loud argument about a sales tax on a bag of beans, her voice bright enough that everyone looked. The gray blazer drifted closer to me like he was browsing. When he got within 2 tables, he lifted his hands palm up, like he wanted peace to have a costume. "We're just here to help," he said. "He left something with you. It shouldn't be yours." "He left it to me," I said, because the Will's scribbled line suddenly felt like a spine I had borrowed. "Wills can be messy," he said. "This isn't about property. It's about safety." "For who?" I asked. "For you," he said smoothly, "and for anyone you tell." He nodded toward Camille without turning his head, which was weirdly impressive. "She wants to use you," he added. "She's bitter. This is the only way she can get her job back. She'll tell you your father was a hero because that sells faster." "You knew my dad?" I asked. "We know everyone who handles money in this town," he said. Camille slammed her beans on the counter. "You charged me twice," she announced to the entire shop, which distracted the barista just enough for her to tilt her tote toward me. Inside, under the folder, was a small Wi-Fi router and a battery pack. "If you're going to be dramatic," the barista said, "I can refund." "What do you want?" I asked the blazer, sinking the question into the gap. "Peace," he said. "And the little blue key. If I leave with that, we'll forget we saw you. You can sell your house. You can grieve. You can go be a normal person again." He made normal sound like a door closing. I stood slowly. I'm going to use the bathroom, I said. He smiled and stepped aside like he was civilized. In the hallway, I walked past the bathroom and through the back exit into the alley. Camille was already there, door caught with her foot, tote open like a magic trick. The little router's lights blinked a private code. What is that? I asked. A honeypot, she said. Put the flash drive files on it. Let them try to connect. When they do, we'll see which networks they're authorized on. We'll get a list of devices, names, maybe the physical location of their props, room door controller if we're lucky. And then? I asked. Then you decide how brave you feel, she said. Or how tired. I pulled the flash drive from my pocket, plugged it into my laptop, dragged the folder. The router blinked like a small city at night. They'll trace you, I said. They already have, she said. I've been traced since the day I stopped being agreeable. We cut across the alley, through the bakery, out onto the side street. My phone buzzed. Eric, please? Don't do anything. Another text immediately after. A photo of our father's workshop, drawers open, a mess he would have hated. Under it, they are searching. I can stall but not forever. Meet me at the storage unit. I showed Camille. She scanned the address. That's where he kept the duplicator, she said. The machine that makes those blue keys. If it's still there, we can cut our own. If it's not, someone already did. The storage unit facility sits beside the highway, rows of orange doors like a cartoon prison. Eric's car was parked crooked outside Unit 211. He stood in the shade, hands empty, shirt untucked, eyes doing math he wasn't good at. When he saw me, he looked relieved and then guilty, then he did that face he does when he decides to pretend this is fine. I didn't bring them, he said. But they follow everything. He glanced at Camille. Who's the accountant? Audit once, she said. He swallowed. Do you have it? He asked me. His voice dipped on it, like the word was heavier than the sentence could hold. Why do you want it so bad? I asked. Because Dad was wrong about one thing, he said. He always thought if you had evidence, the truth would eventually win. He didn't understand that evidence just changes the price. He rolled up the unit door. Inside, shelving, labeled bins, the neatness of a man who believed order could save him. The duplicator sat on a metal table, a little brass jewel of a machine with a clamp for a blank and a tracer arm that followed the original's teeth. Next to it, a small box of blanks with blue enamel bows. It's still here, Camille breathed, both relief and warning. Eric stepped aside like this was my party now. Make your move, he said. But know this, every move has a witness. I clamped the blue key, slid a blank into the other side, lowered the arm. The machine's motor whirred like a sewing machine with a secret. Tiny brass curls fell like confetti for a celebration we didn't deserve. When I lifted the finished key, it felt like a twin trying to decide whether to share a name. 2, Camille said. Make 2. I did. I pocketed 1, gave her 1. Eric watched like a person at a baptism who can't decide if they believe in water. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number, we need to talk. Alone. The theater. Back door. Now. The message had a photo of the community theater's alley. The door labeled props. The blue lock plate. I didn't send that, Eric said, reading over my shoulder without shame. But they know where we are going because everyone goes there eventually. I looked at the key in my palm and thought about the first time Dad let me turn a socket wrench and how heavy it felt until the bolt gave. We can't go together, I said. We can't go at all, Eric said. Then you should probably stop me, I said, and walked toward the car before my legs remembered they had other ideas. The community theater looks like a church that stopped believing. Faded posters in the glass case, a plastic banner begging for donations, a marquee that says coming soon, like a threat. Around back, the alley was a mouth of shade. The door marked props had a mailbox slot and a blue-edged keyhole that made the hair on my arms stand up. I didn't put the key in yet. I stood there breathing the smell of dust and old paint and the ghost of 1,000 fake lives. Camille waited by the corner, watching the street with the patience of a person who knows that most predators prefer the middle of the day. Eric wasn't with us. He'd said he needed to make one more phone call and that he didn't want me to hear it. When I looked at him, he didn't blink. I slid the key in. It resisted like a habit. Then it turned, smooth, and the tumblers sounded older than the door. Inside was not a props closet. Inside was a short stair and a room colder than a lie. The air tasted like paper and metal and something sweet enough to make me think of funeral flowers. Shelves. Boxes. A desk with a scanner. A small server rack humming like a cat. On the far wall, a safe with a keypad whose numbers were rubbed smooth. The rest was ordinary enough that it felt obscene. Camille slipped past me, pulled on latex gloves like she kept them for the idea of days like this. She moved through the room like a librarian after a storm. Look for binders with labels that sound boring, she said. Boring is where they hide ambition. I found one labeled Adjustments Q4. The first page was a spreadsheet printout with columns for dates and initials and amounts. The initials matched the PDFs from Dad's drive. The amounts were round, then slightly not, like someone had gotten lazy with laundromat math. The sign-off column had signatures I recognized. The credit union president, the ridiculous notary who signs everything like a flourish, and a city councilwoman whose campaign signs still littered the median by the highway. My mouth went dry enough to break. Footsteps in the hallway outside, careful like the person was trying to make a deal with the floor. I looked at Camille. She nodded toward the back of the room where a curtain hid a little alcove. We squeezed behind it, pressed against cold concrete. I had a moment of knowing we were too obvious, and then the door opened and that gray blazer voice came in like a draft. "You can feel it," he said to someone soft. "When a lock's been turned recently." Another voice. Warmer. "Eric, you got what you wanted," he said. "He's here. Please." Please is a word I've heard from him 1,000 times and never like that. I stepped out before I had a plan, which is something stories teach you is bravery but which in real life is mostly hope dressed as a dare. "I have 2 keys, I said and held up one. "And a copy of your adjustments." The Blazers smiled like we were at a wine tasting and I'd used the wrong glass. "Then this can still be civilized," he said. Behind him, the bulky driver closed the door and leaned on it like he was in a portrait. Eric didn't look at me. He looked at the key. "Give it, we walk and this ends," he said. "They'll let us sell the house. They'll leave Mom's grave alone. They'll—" "Mom's grave?" I said, because he'd said it like something could happen to it beyond weather. The Blazer spread his hands again. "We aren't monsters," he said softly. "We're custodians. Things get misplaced. We return them. Your father's little detour was unfortunate. But he was smart enough to know the world is too complicated for heroes. He left you the illusion because he loved you." Camille stepped out then, and the way the Blazer's face changed told me he hadn't known about her. "Not yet." "Unfortunate," she repeated. "Is that what we're calling a hit and run with no video because your IT director lost the footage?" He tilted his head. "Cars hit things. It's very sad." Eric reached fast and took the key from my raised hand. It was so clean I barely felt the lift. He turned to the safe. He hesitated just long enough to tell me he hadn't opened it before. Then he punched a code. The safe beeped approval. He opened it. Inside were 4 ledgers, a pistol wrapped in a felt cloth, and an envelope with our last name on it in my father's sharp print. Eric lifted the envelope and flinched like it was hot. He held it like he might hold a baby he didn't trust himself with. The Blazer took a small step closer. "We'll take those," he said. Eric looked at me then. Really looked. Maybe he saw the attic. Maybe he saw the pantry. Maybe he saw me as a kid, knee-deep in Lego, ready to believe we were engineers. He did something I'm still not sure how to count. He put the envelope in my hands. The driver stepped forward. The room shrank. Camille said, "Stop," not like a command but like a mother at a crosswalk. She held up her tote, the little router humming inside. "You've been connected since the moment you started circling the block," she said. "We have device IDs that touch your door controllers, your phantom accounts, your vendor routers, your councilwoman's campaign office Wi-Fi. We have pings. They all hop to a single fixed IP registered under a shell that pays for the theater's electricity. If we walk out of here and I press send, your entire organization spends the next 6 months explaining why all your footsteps land on the same tile." The Blazer's eyes were pleasant in the cruel way of polished shoes. "That assumes someone cares," he said. "This is a small town. People like quiet. They like convenience. They like that their checks clear and their kids' soccer fields get resurfaced. They will decide you are loud. Loud people get tuned out." "Maybe," she said. "But sometimes loud is rhythm. And rhythm makes people dance even when they didn't mean to." Eric tucked the ledger under his arm and handed the safe key to me like surrendering a map. "Make your move," he said again, but this time it wasn't a taunt. It was a dare that believed in me enough to be dangerous. I didn't have a move, so I made a bad one that turned out to be the right kind. I tore the envelope open. Inside was a single sheet, a notarized statement from my father, dated 2 months before he died, naming names, amounts, dates, wire numbers, the phrase "under duress," and at the bottom a line, "If anything happens to me, contact the state AG's office. Ask for Arjun. He owes me." Use the phrase, "Larkspur is a habit." The blazer laughed once. "The state," he said. "They like quiet more than we do." "Maybe," I said. "But my dad made a life out of fixing broken cheap things. He did it over and over until they worked. I think I can do repetition." I pulled out my phone and started recording, not because I thought I'd get a confession, but because people change when a red dot looks at them. The driver shifted, reflexive. The blazer smoothed his tie. Camille angled the tote so the router faced the safe like it was hungry. Eric exhaled like he'd been underwater a long time. "You don't want to do that," the blazer said. "You keep telling me what I don't want," I said. "You might be right. But you might also be confusing my fear with a schedule problem. I can be scared now and brave later." He moved then, too quick, a hand toward my phone. The driver followed, a step, another. Eric did something messy and holy. He stepped between us and it didn't look like bravery until he stayed there. The driver grabbed his shoulder. Eric dropped, pivoted, turned the grab into an arm lock he learned in some long-ago self-defense class he used to joke he'd never need. The driver's face said surprise and then pain. The blazer reached past him and hit the recording button with the dull part of his palm. My phone stayed recording. The red dot didn't care whose hand hovered above it. Sirens are honest. They say, "We're coming and we'll be as late as we always are and as early as we can be." They showed up not because I called, but because the building had a silent alarm tied to the safe that our break of the seal had woken. The blazer looked annoyed, not afraid. "This is a misunderstanding," he said to the air, already practicing for the cop's body cam. When the officers came in, they looked like people who still thought they could distinguish between a good guy and a bad one with their eyes. The blazer's ID said consultant. The driver said security. Camille's said nothing. Mine said citizen with a shaking hand. Eric said sorry. It took a long time to make the first short decisions. They separated us. They asked questions twice to see if our answers changed. I handed over the envelope. I said the names from the letter slowly. I said state AG like a brand new language. One officer's mouth tightened, not in disbelief but in recognition of paperwork arriving like weather. The blazer's answers had the polish of someone who had been in rooms like this and left fewer fingerprints each time. The driver's answers were smaller, someone who'd been told the story of himself and accepted the casting. The AG's investigator, Arjun, did not arrive like a hero. He arrived like a person with a sore back and a notebook that had seen rain. He shook my hand and said my father's first name like they'd swallowed the same jokes. He looked at the blue key for a long time, like he was memorizing the way something small can be heavy. He said, "Your dad called me 3 times. I didn't call back quickly enough the 3rd time." He didn't add the apology. He didn't have to. It sat between us. It didn't turn into a movie. It turned into hours. Boxes. Chain of custody forms. The blazer made his calls. The councilwoman's aide arrived, sweating. Someone upstairs at the credit union pretended not to know what we were talking about and then remembered too much. The local paper sent a kid who looked like he wanted to write about concerts and got stuck with corruption. Somewhere in the middle of all that, Eric and I sat on the theater steps with bottled water and a shared silence that didn't hurt. "Dad wanted you to have the key," he said eventually. "I wanted you to give it to me so I could give it to them and make it all go away." "You could have," I said. "Maybe," he said. "But you looked at me like I could be the guy who didn't." That was heavier than the key. We went home that night to a house that had been emptied by polite strangers with search warrants. The hallway clock was put back 10 minutes wrong. I didn't fix it. I left it there like a small admission that time rarely belongs to us. In the workshop, the towel drawer was askew. I straightened it. Finding order is a tiny prayer. I finally read the letter he'd left for me. It didn't forgive me for being slow or blame me for being fast. It said he had learned late that love wasn't protecting people from the truth. It was standing next to them while they looked at it. It said if I was reading, I'd probably met the parts of the world he wished I wouldn't, and that if I needed to break something to make it right, I should pick something replaceable like a lock and not something I'd miss like myself. Weeks later, There were hearings where people who'd never been in our town pretended to understand it. The credit union shuttered 4 renovations. The councilwoman resigned to be with family, which meant to be with lawyers. The blazer faded the way professionals do when the season changes. The driver took a plea that read like a tired bedtime story. Camille testified without drama and then went back to an apartment with too many file boxes and a window that faces a brick wall. Eric asked me to dinner and then actually showed up. We ate 2 plates of fries and called it a truce with ketchup. I kept the blue key. Not because it opened anything now, the lock had been replaced, but because sometimes the thing you hold is not a tool but a sentence you promise to finish. I carry it on a chain. It's heavier than it looks. I think about Dad in the attic writing my name on an envelope, pretending his hands didn't shake. I think about 3:07. I let the clock be wrong. I sleep anyway. A month after everything, the coffee shop chalkboard said, "We can't fix the world, but we can fix this cup." I laughed in a way that startled the barista. I walked to the community theater and put my hand on the brick like I was checking a pulse. Inside, teenagers practiced a musical about nothing important and everything that matters. The props door was painted a new color. No blue edge. Clean lock. Fresh start theater. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost let it go. Then I answered. A voice I didn't know said, "You don't know me, but your dad fixed my grandmother's stove in 2009 and refused payment, so I mow his lawn now. I heard what you did. I can come by Saturday, trim the hedges, whatever. People say the house looks sad." "Saturday's fine," I said. "We'll be there." "We," he said like a test. "Me and my brother," I said, and felt the sentence settle where it belonged. That night I put the blue key on the windowsill and watched it catch the orange of a streetlight. For a second it looked red, then gold, then ordinary. The clock in the hallway ticked wrong, and I let it because the right time is sometimes a future you have to earn. I slept without dreaming about the pantry door. And in the morning I woke up early and made coffee the way Dad did, careful, patient, like repetition could teach the day its lines.